Good morning, everyone, or good day. So let's talk about the z-test. Okay, so for today's lesson, we are going to talk about the statistical treatment for descriptive and correlational research. Okay, so we have the z-test. And about the Pearson R, I've given this to you. And nag-send na po ako ng video presentation last semester pa. So ngayon, ang pag-uusapan lang muna natin is yung z-test and Spearman row. Ayan, silang dalawa. Okay, so in the chapter, on the research chapter natin, specifically sa research methodology, we have to include kung ano yung mga statistical treatment na gagamitin natin. Okay, so for the statistical analysis, it is a part of the research methodology that describes the appropriate statistical technique to be used in analyzing a set of research data. Okay, now let's have here the z-test. The specific statistical treatment for descriptive research. Okay, so if you have descriptive research or if you are doing descriptive research, you have to do z-test specifically when we are testing our hypothesis. It is also used to determine the amount of effect of an independent variable on the dependent variable. Meanwhile, for the Pearson R, it is used to indicate how strong the linear relationship of variables that are indicated in research. It is also the specific statistical treatment for correlational research. So here we go. So let's talk about z-test. So for the z-test, so I've said that it is specific statistical treatment for the descriptive research. Okay, ngayon paano ba natin gagamitin yung z-test sa pag-hypothesis testing? So we have different steps or following steps uh, to serve as our guide. So steps in hypothesis testing using z-test. The first one, of course, we have to state the null and alternative hypothesis. Number two, we have to set a level of significance. It can be 0.01, 0.05, and zero point 0.1. But then, we always use 0.05. And then the third step is we have to compute for the z value. So, itong part na to, yung part 3, medyo dito tayo magfo-focus, dito tayo magtatagal kasi meron tayong kukumpletuhing table, meron tayong gagawing table, and we have to substitute the values na makukuha natin from the table na gagawin natin. So, brace yourselves. Okay, so compute for the z value. So that is the third step. And then for the fourth step, we have to compare the z-test value to the value of onto the table of values to get the z value. Afterwards, subtract it from the critical value to get the p value. Okay, so after natin kumuha ng z value or makuha natin yung value, titingnan naman natin sa table para makuha natin yung pinaka-z value niya. And we have to subtract it doon sa critical value natin. So, yung critical value natin, yun yung 0.05. And then after the step 4 is the step 5, which is if p value is less than the level of significance or yung na-compute natin is mas mababa, then reject the null hypothesis. Now, if p-value is greater than the level of significance, then fail to reject the null hypothesis. And lastly, we have to make a decision. So to be more clear, to be more specific, let us have a problem or sample problem that is actually given on your module. So we have to explain or I have to explain and I have to elaborate this part sa inyo. Okay, the researchers assume that social media has no significant impact to students' behavioral performance. That is why they set 3.00 or 3 as their population mean. So it is already given the problem. So the first step is we have to state the null and alternative hypotheses. So as we can see, we have here the null hypothesis, so that is social media has no significant impacts to students' behavioral performance. Ayan, nagkulang tayo ng performance. Meanwhile, for the alternative hypothesis, social media has significant impact. Actually, it has significant impacts to students' behavioral performance. So, disregard natin yung no na word sa alternative hypothesis. Typographical error lang. Okay. So, since we have this null and alternative hypothesis, of course, the step 2 is we have to set the level of significance. So, our level of significance 0.05 po yung gagamitin natin or palagi natin yung ginagamit. 0.05. Okay, and then after the step 2, we have to compute for the z value. Okay, so we have here the formula. So z, it is the value of test statistics and sample mean minus the population mean over standard deviation divided by the square root of number of frequencies. So, malalaman natin kung paano natin kukunin yung mga given dito. At ito yung mga isa-substitute natin sa ating formula. So, ngayon, let's proceed na doon sa pagkukompute ng z-value. But before we get to the z-value, we should complete this table first. So, as we can see, meron tayong 7 na columns. So, the first one is class interval, frequency, class mark, frequency, and class mark or frequency times class mark, and class mark minus sample mean, and then yung squared value na, and then yung last part, which is frequency multiplied by our squared value of class mark minus sample mean. Okay, so medyo magguguluhan pa tayo, pero tingnan natin kung paano ba natin isosolve to isa-isa or paano ba natin makukumpleto itong ating table na to. Okay, so this is the given example from your module. So we have here our sample table. Ngayon na alamin natin kung paano nakuha ang mga values sa bawat columns. Okay, as we can see, we have here the class interval. So, class interval, ito yung mga values na nasa rating scale na natin sa ating questionnaire. Meanwhile, for the frequency, ito naman yung mga bilang kung ilan ang nagsagot per scale. Okay? So, makukuha nyo lang yung value ng frequency kapag tapos na kayo mag-gather ng data para mabilang nyo kung ilan yung nagsagot sa 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, this is just an example na lang for you to have a guide. Meanwhile, for the class mark, since sa intervals tayo, kung ano yung nasa interval natin, yun din po ang ating class mark. So, as we can see, we have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 as our class mark. Okay, so in this table, we have also the total number of frequency that is 30. So, yun yung n natin. N is 30. Yan, ito yung may circle na red. It will be one of the values na kailangan natin para sa ating z value. So, tandaan natin yung n natin is 30. Now, let us analyze kung paano or kung ano-ano ang meron sa column natin. Okay, so for the fourth column, we have frequency multiplied by class mark. Okay, and then class mark, yung the fifth column naman, ang meron natin dyan is yung class mark, ima-minus natin sa ating sample mean. So, yung sample mean mamaya i-explain natin or explain ko kung paano makukuha. And then, for the sixth column, squared value of class mark minus sample mean. Yan. Kung ano yung i-square lang natin yung ating fifth column dito sa sixth column. And then, for the last column, frequency multiplied by squared value of our class mark minus sample mean. Okay. So now, let us see the product of frequency and class mark. So mag-proceed muna tayo doon sa ating fourth column, yung FM or yung ating frequency and class mark. Okay? So, for the frequency and class mark, so that dito sa fourth column natin, imo-multiply lang natin yung frequency and class mark. So, as we can see, we have 18, 5. 18 is our frequency and 5 is our class mark for the first row. Therefore, we have 90. 7 times 4, 28. 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 2 is 4. 0 times 1 is 0. And of course, huwag natin kalimutan ilagay yung summation ng FM or summation ng frequency and class mark natin. And that is 90 plus 28 plus 9 plus 4 plus 0 is 131. Okay, so ito yung ating frequency multiplied by our class mark or multiplied to our class mark. Okay, so next naman is, ayan, after ng ating class mark, next naman tayo is yung, after ng ating frequency and class mark, i-multiply na natin since tapos na tayo. Proceed naman tayo dito sa class mark minus sample mean. Okay, so we have the class mark, yung 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pero nasan yung sample mean natin? Okay, so tingnan ninyo yung nasa baba na solution dito or nasa babang solving. So how to get the sample mean? So how to get the sample mean? So we have the formula summation of Fm over n or divided by n. So ano ba yung Fm natin? So let us look from the table. Yung Fm natin, ito yung summation ng minultiply natin na frequency at class mark and that is 131. Okay? And then ano yung n natin or divided by n? So yung n natin, balik tayo sa table. Ito yung total number of frequency natin. That is 30. Okay, so let us have this. 131 divided by 30 is 4.37. So 4.37 will be our sample mean. Okay, so ngayon, yung 4.37 na yon, ima-minus natin siya doon sa ating class mark. Okay, so as we can see, tingnan natin yung value dito sa panglima na column. So, bakit naging 0.63? Kasi po, yung class mark na 5 ay minus natin sa ating sample mean na 4.37. Okay? And then, yung class mark na 4, minus natin sa ating 4.37. That is why nagkaroon tayo ng negative 0.37 dito. Okay? And then, yung class mark na 3, minus natin sa 4.37. That is why meron tayong negative 1.37. And so on and so forth. Okay, so huwag ninyong kalimutan pagdating dito sa limang column, hanapin nyo muna yung inyong sample mean. And then, i-minus nyo na yung class mark doon sa ating sample mean. Tapos dito na ninyo ilagay sa fifth column yung differences nila or difference nila. Okay? So, after the fifth column, let us proceed dito sa sixth column. So, ito naman yung squared value of x. Ayan. And sample mean. Squared value of class mark and sample mean. So, hindi ko lang nailagay yung dash. So, as we can see, square lang natin yung may circle na orange. Yan. Squared lang natin yan. Ibig sabihin, i-multiply natin sila sa sarili nila. So, 0.63 times 0.63 is 0.40. Negative 0.37 times negative 0.37 is 0.14. And negative 1.37 times itself, 1.88. Negative 2.37 times negative 2.37 is 5.62. And lastly, negative 3.37 multiply natin sa sarili niya, so 11.36. And of course, wag natin kalimutan sa part na to, sa sixth column natin, ilalagay natin kung ano yung summation ng ating sixth column. So, yung summation ng summation ng class mark minus our sample mean squared is 19.4. Okay. Ayan, tandaan natin. So, meron na tayong class interval, frequency, class mark, and frequency. Ayan, yung product nila. And then, yung difference ng ating sample mean and our class mark. And then, yung na-squared value ng ating sixth or fifth column. So, ngayon, proceed na tayo dun sa last table or last column pala. Ayan. So, for the last column, we have frequency times squared value of our sample mean and class mark. So, imo-multiply natin yung ating frequency. So, yung frequency natin is 18. Okay? And then, yung squared value natin, ito yung pang-anim. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pang-anim na column. So, yung 18, i-multiply natin sa 0.40, magiging 7.2. Okay? So, 7, i-multiply natin sa 0.14, magiging 0.98. And then, yung 3, multiply natin sa ating 1.88, magiging 5.64. And then, 2, i-multiply natin sa 5.62, magiging 11.24. And 0, i-multiply natin sa 11.36, ito ay 0. Okay, and then after that, i-summation ulit natin or i-add natin lahat yan. So, meron tayong 25.06. So, kung makikita natin, konti lang yung ginawa natin ng summation. Yun lang yung product ng frequency and class mark, yung squared value ng ating class mark and our sample mean, and then ito yung last column. So, yun lang yung isa-summation natin kasi ito yung mga kailangan natin or kinakailangan natin sa pagsosolve. Okay, so now, we are complete dun sa table natin. So, ngayon, after completing the table, let us now compute for the standard deviation. So, wala pa yung z-value natin, pero kaya nyo naman yan. Okay, after natin ng table, sunod is yung standard deviation. Okay, so we have the formula for the standard deviation. So, ito yung nasa baba na box na white. Okay, so we have the standard deviation is equal to summation of f or frequency multiplied by the squared value of our class mark minus sample mean over n, that is the total number of frequency, minus 1. Okay, so now let us substitute the values. So yung mga value na to, makukuha natin siya dito sa table natin. That is why sabi ko kanina kailangan natin ng summation kasi kakailanganin natin yan sa pagsosolve sa mga susunod. Okay, so next is we have to substitute yung mga values. So, summation of f x minus the sample mean squared. So, nasaan siya? Nasa last part or nasa last na column. That is 25.06 over n. So, ano ba yung n natin? So, our n is 30. Okay? 30, ayan makikita natin sa table. Nasa frequency siya na column. So, 30 minus 1. Okay, and then 25.06 minus 29. Okay, ngayon square root natin yung mga values na yan. Ayan. Square root of 0.86. So, yung 0.86 nakuha natin siya nung na-divide natin yung 25.6 or 25.06 sa ating 29. So, naging 0.86 na siya. Pero kailangan din natin i-square root sila. Therefore, square root of 0.86 is 0.93. Okay, so we are done with our table. Nakompleto na natin. Nakuha natin yung sample mean and nakuha na natin yung standard deviation. So ngayon, ang susunod na process natin is, ayan, let's look for the z-value na. So yan, nahanapin na natin yung z-value. Okay, so ito yung table natin. Nandito yung mga formulas. Nandito yung mga given natin. So, yung ating sample mean is 4.37. Our population mean is 3. which is given na dun sa problem natin. Standard deviation is 0.93. Ito yung nakuha natin a while ago. And then number of frequencies. Ayan, tignan ulit natin yung table. Sa frequency na column, makikita natin yung 30. Okay, so itong mga may arrow na to, magagamit natin siya sa pagkuha ng ating z-value. Okay, so let's make it clear. Now, the table is complete and other values are solved. Let us finally look for our z-value. So, inilagay ko dito yung mga given and mga given value for each part ng ating formula. So, yung formula ng z-value is nasa unang box na maliit. Okay? So, z is equal to sample mean, which is, mamaya natin substitute. Sample mean minus the population mean over the standard deviation divided by the square root of number of frequencies. Okay, so let us substitute yung mga value na yon. So 4.37, that is our sample mean, minus our population mean, that is 3, over our standard deviation, that is 0.93, divided by the square root of 30. So, wag ninyong kakalimutan palaging ilagay yung square root of 30. Yung square root na symbol dun sa loob ng n, or sa labas ng n rather. Okay, so after natin ma-substitute, let us solve. Okay? Dito na tayo sa third box na maliit. 4.37 minus 3.00 is 1.37. Okay? Then, over 0.93 and then na-square root na natin yung 30, naging 5.48. So, next na tayo. Dito na tayo sa last box. So, 1.37 over 0.17. Okay, yung 0.17 nakuha natin siya nung dinivide natin yung 0.93 at 5.48. Okay? So, we have this value, 8.07. Okay? 8.07 is our z-value. So, ayan, after makompleto yung table, after kuhanin yung sample mean, after kuhanin yung standard deviation, nag-substitute tayo sa value, nag-substitute tayo ng value sa ating mga formula, then meron na tayong z-value. Okay? So, hindi dyan nagtatapos yung lahat. Since our z-value is 8.07, sabi kanina, tingnan natin sa table kung ano yung magiging pinaka-value ng 8.07 natin na i-compare natin later sa ating critical value. Okay. Ayan. So, meron ulit tayong table dito. So, step 4. Di ba yung step 3, kailangan hanapin natin yung z-value or gamitan natin ng z-test. So, ngayon, we have to compare the z-test value to the table of values to get the c-value and afterward, subtract it from critical value to get the p-value. Okay, so our computed value kanina is 8.07. Ito, di ba, balikan ko. 8.07. So, ngayon, ang 8.07, dito sa table, sa statistical table for C-value, tingnan natin, dito sa pinaka, ayan, yung may box na gray, pinaka-vertical, as we can see, wala tayong makitang 8.07 kasi hanggang 3.4 lang. Okay, and then, tingnan natin yung 0.05, 0.9997. Pero hindi ito yung gagamitin natin kasi sabi sa rule, if the computed value is more than 3.40, which is mas mataas naman talaga ang lagpas ng 3.40 yung 8.07, di ba? So kapag ganon, kapag 3.40 pataas, ang magiging z value natin ay 0.9999. Okay? Uulitin ko, since our computed value is 8.07 and wala na siya sa table, lagpas na siya sa 3.40, automatically, ang magiging z-value natin is 0.9999. Okay, 9999. Ayan, apat na 9. So, ayan, meron na tayong z-value, which is the 0.9999. 0.9999 and our critical value is 0.05. So yung critical value natin, ito yung kanina na sinet natin, which is 0.05. So ngayon, after daw natin makuha yung z value, i-minus daw natin sa critical value. Okay? So critical value minus z value is ito, 0.05 minus 0.9999 is equal to negative 0.4999. Okay. So, ito yung lumabas sa atin. So, 0 or negative 0.4999 is less than 0.05. So, i-compare natin, okay, i-compare natin yung ating p-value dun sa ating critical value. Yung p-value natin is yung negative 0.4999 and our critical value is 0.05. So, as we can see, mas less or lesser yung ating p-value sa ating critical value. So, anong magiging decision natin kapag ganon yung nangyari? Okay, so we are in the sixth step. So, meron tayong mas mababa daw yung p-value natin sa ating critical value or mas mababa yung negative 0.4999 sa ating 0.05. Therefore, we have to reject our null hypothesis. Okay, and then we have here the decision. After nung mga computations natin, nakuha natin yung z-value, nakita na natin sa ating table, na compare, na subtract na natin yung ating mga values, tapos na-compare na natin yung p-value natin sa ating critical value, then we have to decide kung i-reject ba natin yung ating null hypothesis or i-accept natin. So, based dito sa nakuha natin, we have to reject the null hypothesis. Therefore, our decision is social media has a significant effect on students' behavioral performance. Okay, so ayan. Ganito po tayo gumawa ng ating z-test. Ayan, ganyan gagamitin ninyo kapag kayo ay descriptive correlational. Okay, so next naman sa video ko is Spearman neuron naman yung i-discuss ko. Okay, so thank you so much for listening about the z-test, and let's have our discussion sa Spearman neuron. Thank you.